Okay, so half past, let's kick off. I think people will join as they join. Thank you very much for joining. Let's begin with a couple of house rules, as they say. What I'm going to do is mute from my side, but obviously give you the ability to unmute if you need to. But if everybody could try and keep their mics off for background noise, that will be fantastic. I'd like to welcome you all to Valuate's first event, free event, but first event actually, and particularly during these times, we have to do this technological way of doing things. I think we all have to acclimatize to this new way of living into the future. So we'll be doing that as we adjust the process. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much for coming on board and being part of this. I think we're going to get a little benefit out of this, hopefully today for everybody. So just a reminder, obviously you're on mute, so just manage your cell phones a little bit. I've had to do that on my side as well. I've talked about the mics. Look, we're going to try and keep within the hour. It's a public holiday, so we would like to get you out there to go and enjoy the rest of the day. But if we do run over, I'm going to try and insist that we don't run over more than 10, 15 minutes because we may get some dialogue and questions going that we need to answer. The big one, which is always the big one, it's called ESCOM. ESCOM may come along and try and throw a monkey wrench in our plans, i.e. load shedding. So if anything like that happens on my side, please stay logged on. I will try and log back in. I've got a little back here and there, but that's just something that's beyond our controls. We are recording. I hope everybody is comfortable with that. What we'd like to do in the end is to take this and it's a little bit in terms of some of the information that comes from it to be shared amongst others. My advice is to put your Zoom. I'm sure we're all getting a bit of experience on this now. I certainly am. I'm not saying I'm a fundi, but I'm getting some senses of experience. To put your screens on presenter. Therefore, whoever's speaking at the time will be the person that features on your screen. Otherwise, we tend to be all over the place. So let's kick off. I think we've got quite a few participants already, and we've got a few more to come on, and I'm sure they'll log on as we go along. But for the purposes of time, let's kick off. Icebreaker, shall we say? Let's see what you can either write it on a paper or you can put it on the chat. Where's everybody from? Are there any people from outside Johannesburg? Let's put it on the chats. Let's see where everybody. And what are you? Are you a parent? Are you a graduate? Are you a matriculant? Let's get to see what people are from. First one up is my son. He says he's from Joburg. Oh, we've got a Cape Town ex-teacher. Great. Randburg, Joburg. Cold Joburg student. Yep, we're all cold. Stay warm. Make sure you got a cup of coffee. You got a parent as well. Cape Town, Nigeria. Wow. Okay, somebody from Nigeria. Welcome. Kempton Park, Vandervale Park, Joburg. Graduate. Benoni. Okay, so we've got a Randburg. We've got a stretch. Grade 8, okay, 14-year-old. This is going to be useful for you. The earlier you start, the better. Welcome, Ethan. That's fantastic. So we are talking about the youth, and we're talking about building into the youth for the future. And I'm privileged to have a couple of people who have been what I would call my guardian angels, who have significantly been my voice of reason, who have helped me push this forward. And they're going to be some of the panelists who are going to be questions. There's one or two people who are giving me a hand, who just put their hand up to say I can help today, Vic. And the one is Nomzamo. So Nomzamo is there. Nomzamo will speak, and when she speaks, she will say a little bit about herself. I've also got Rafilwe, who will also say a few things. I've also got Dumisa. Dumisa will say a few things as well. Dumisa is my eldest son. He'll about living under Dad's roof, so to speak. Claudia, who's put her hand up just to say, can I help out today and be my voice of reason? So thank you very much, and thank you for being the people who have, quite significantly done well in really supporting me. Once again, every once in a while, I'll jump in and remind everybody just to put themselves on mute. Put yourself on mute.
Yeah.
You can put yourself on mute, Michael. Thank you very much. Fantastic, fantastic. Right, so that's the panel. Let me tell you just a little bit about me very quickly. My name is Vigela. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Vigela Rankin. Started Value Ed about 12 years ago, and it's just evolved and grown ever since then. My objectives with Value Ed have always to take what I call a collective wisdom or concepts, ideas, experiences, put them in a pot, give them to the youth so that they can, prepare their own stew for the future, so to speak. One of the things that I realized when I was growing up was that there was not a lot of what I would call advice in terms of just the directions to take. So I think it's important in this time and age where, as we know, things are getting a bit more difficult, to try and utilize what we have experienced in our past. I'm 52 years of age. I tend to say that my railway track ahead of me is significantly going to be maybe less than my railway track behind me, but therefore I would like to utilize the rest of my railway track to try and impart some experiences that I've had combined with everybody else's experiences. So that's a little bit about me, and hopefully over time, as we have these sessions and move into the future with the subscription sessions, you'll get to know me and who I am. So into the subject, and the subject is the future of the youth post-COVID. And as you can see, I put the post-COVID in inverted commas, deliberately so, because the new norm or post-COVID, well, what's that going to be and what's that going to look like? But I think it's an important subject to start having now as we move into our different stages of lockdown, and also to start harnessing what it is that we have done or what we have experienced over the last few months as we've been in lockdown. So let me start off by asking, a question. Actually, before I ask the question, I just want to set the scene in a different way as well. June 16 in 1976, students got together and decided in Soweto that a medium of education, particularly the language of Afrikaans, which was now going to be instructed to be used within schools, was not what they wanted. And they took to the streets. And hence we had the June 16 riots in 1976. Now, taking that construct away from what actually happened and looking at it from holistically, what ultimately happened was that the youth set the course, the direction of what was going to happen within an educational system. They took on the government of the time, and they took them on quite ferociously. A lot of the youth lost their lives. They sacrificed their lives for a cause. If we fast forward to today, I have mentioned yesterday that the youth are playing quite a prominent role in determining the direction that this country goes. Whether you now look at parliaments in terms of hours and the age that's there, whether you look at what's going on globally, worldwide, in terms of how the youth are taking on racism. So I want to ask the question and pose the question to you as we go through our discussion today. What I have talked about is a collective, but the collective is made up of individuals. You as an individual, what role are you thinking of playing, or are you playing in the future of your tomorrow? And I think this day sets a good tone or a good time to be able to start really digesting that. I know we think of this quite cognitively. We have it in our minds. I'd like to translate what we have in our minds into our DNA, because the moment we do that, it changes behavior. So it is a very significant day. It is a very significant holiday. It is a very significant time. And particularly for the youth, it is a significant moment based on what we're going through. So I hope that's what's going to create the thought processes and the thinking that may happen after this session that we've had today, particularly for yourselves. So I thought I'd start off, before I go into the panel, and just continue to set the scene around this construct. And I'll probably take it from the perspective of how COVID has affected me. And one of the things that I've had to do. One of the things that I've had to do really quite extensively is reflect on myself and how I'm going to move forward. So I left my job at the end of November last year, with 2020 the year of 2020. We were going to go in, and we had this, we were really upset with 2019. We were going to go into 2020, and it was a whole new year and a whole new beginning. And come February, the first wheel came off the car, and by the time we hit March, it had come to a grinding halt. And I had to reflect, because this wasn't the plan for me. But one of the things that really amplified itself for me is this phrase. And I want to ask the question, and you can put it on chat, and I'd like to see, how many of you have heard and also believe in the construct that you reap what you sow? Let's see what the chat says. You reap what you sow. Have you heard of it before? And do you believe in it? I have a relatively good idea as to, I've heard and I believe. Yes, I've heard, definitely. Yes, I do believe in it. Yes, I have. Yes, I do. Yes, I believe in it, etc. So I kind of got, thank you, everybody. And I did have a sense that a lot of people would actually believe in it. And I do too. What goes around comes around. You get what you deserve. There's a lot of those phrases. But what's actually happened in the last few weeks for me is really getting into that phrase. You reap what you sow. And there's something that never stood out to me as much as it has now during COVID. And that's the word you. I kind of said it in a whole sentence, but the moment you start saying you reap what you sow, it kind of now starts throwing the excuses out the window. You don't reap what your parents sowed. You don't reap what your teachers sowed. You don't reap what the environment sows. You reap what you sow. Try to look at this from all sorts of angles. I even decided, right, let's go and look at what goes around comes around. And that usually is used in the terminology to try and express it for people who are not necessarily doing the things we want them to do. Be careful, what goes around comes around. We've heard that before. But it's not just a negative, it's a positive, even on both sides. What you put down today is going to come back to you tomorrow. What you put down today is going to come back to you tomorrow. So that now starts setting the scene as to, even during this time of COVID, even during this time of our difficulties, as the youth, parents, what are we putting down to reap for tomorrow? Now, what I see is a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, a lot of defensiveness, a lot of etc. But I'm not necessarily seeing what we're laying as a foundation, what we're preparing for in terms of what we want to see and what we want to reap later on. So think about that a little bit as we go into the discussion, because once we've digested that, more so than cognitively understood it, Lorna, you can't hear anymore. Anyone else? Can everybody hear me? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. People can hear. Great. Okay. Fantastic. I think one or two can't hear. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Lorna, hopefully you'll figure it out. It might be something on your side. But as we go into this, I just wanna go to start off with Dumisa. Dumisa is my 23-year-old son, and I just want to ask him. He is probably you'll explain in terms of where he is in the world at the present moment, but he's not far from having finished school. He's just completed his tertiary education. I want to ask him, how are you coping post-COVID? And maybe let me set a little bit more of the scene for you, Dumisa. I want to ask you the question based on the fact that you are no longer at home. You decided last year to go and live your life. You've moved on. You've in a business. You'll explain that a little bit more. But then COVID came along. Tell me how you're managing to handle that.
Mm. Cool. First off, hi everyone. I hope you're having an amazing youth day so far. I know it's really early, but I'm really excited to have some cool conversations and see where this goes. But yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Demisa Rankin. I'm this old man's oldest son. And currently I'm age 22, going on to 23 within the next 3 months or so. So I'm also slowly getting old. But yeah, I studied film in AFTA, which is a film school here in Johannesburg. And that was a 3-year course, and I chose not to go into honors. And last year when I moved out, a friend of mine, my roommate, we started a business. And basically the business that we started was digital content creation that specifically focuses on value-based content. So how can we add value to businesses with the content that they create to help their bottom end or ultimately just generate more revenue? And so that's our primary focus. And we've been doing it for about a year and a bit now, maybe a year and a half or so, I guess 6 months in. And yeah, this year was also supposed to be a very exciting, 2020 type of year for us. We had a lot of plans and a lot of clients that we had lined up for this year. Actually, it was about 12 or 13 clients that we had lined up. So it was, looking to be the best few months of our entire year so far. And once February or so hits, towards March specifically is when we really started feeling it, that totally dipped. And we now only have a total of 2 clients, which is kind of intense. Most of those clients having difficulties with internal financing, as well as the fact that some of them were events-based companies. So, people aren't allowed to congregate together anymore. So it did a huge impact on our business, as well as the businesses that were around us and that we were trying to collaborate with. But ultimately, I'm still quite excited for this year, despite the difficulties that have come in. I know it's more challenging than it would have originally seemed or was originally planned to be. But, in the space that I'm in terms of content, I have to just look at the bright side. Obviously, for a business, you have to prepare for the worst. And so we have to take care of the clients that we have. But I look towards the bright side in the sense that this is a phase and a period, particularly on the African continent, where people are being forced to basically look at tons and tons of content. And as someone who's in the content space, it's basically doing part of my job for me, part of the sales job. In future, I could just reference back to how much content people would have watched during this lockdown period to show just the importance of it and how it keeps people entertained, how it helps you in terms of mental issues when it comes to in scenarios where you're alone or whatever that might be. So content's really important. And I think that despite this difficulty of the lockdown, yeah, still an exciting time from my perspective.
Thanks, Demisa. So I think you've said a couple of things there that are critical. The one is a construct that we talk about, which is you got to keep on keeping on. Things will come in your life that will completely shift the trajectory of the direction that you thought you were going, but you got to keep on keeping on. And that's a subject matter that we have quite a bit of conversation in our program. The second one is that you've got to continue to dream the plan. Now, the conversation of dreaming is essential. If you do not set the vision, and irrespective of how high that vision is, that you still need to go up that mountain, it becomes difficult for you to keep on keeping on if you don't have your vision. So I think you've been successful in the fact that you've got a vision and it's a big vision. And over time, when people get to know you, they understand what that vision is. But you've also managed to keep on keeping on. You've adjusted in terms of the situation that happens. I just want to add that, you know, you reap what you sow doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate explanations as to why things get in the way. There are. There always will be. Environmental factors play a role. COVID coming along plays a role. But what it does say is that those are explanations and should not define you and become excuses. We can use the explanations to harness ourselves to move forward, but we should never use the excuses to paralyze us, to stop us. So what I'd like to ask is a question, just a participative question for you to think about. In the future, post-COVID, quote unquote, what do you think is going to be the most important out of the following three? Experience, qualifications, or skills? Please stick it into the chat. Let's see what we get. And Claudia, if you could just take a look at that and see what we've got, whilst I just go on to, and what Claudia will do is just have a look and then come back to us with a couple of answers as to what that is. Let me say it again. What do you think is going to be important in the future as we move on? Qualifications, experience, or skills? Now, you may think two, you may think all three, or you may think one, but let's see what I see. Skills are coming up quite a bit. But in the meantime, I'd like to go to Nomzamo. And I think Nomzamo's got a little bit of a story to tell about the impact of COVID on herself, as well as how she has now tried to take advantage of that situation moving forward. Zami, tell people about you. I know you're a lady, but your age would be appropriate at this precise moment. And then tell them how you are battling forward.
Cool. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nomzamo, as Vic has introduced me, but a lot of people know me as Zami. I am 34 years young, so not old, still a youth for the last year. And for me, you know, COVID has come with changes. I wouldn't say challenges, more changes for me, because I used to work at an organization called AdCorp, heading up their market, heading up their events and customer experience. Due to COVID, the company underwent retrenchment, and I then obviously lost my employment. So that was the biggest change for me, just during lockdown, around obviously no longer having this formal place of employment, which was something I'd never been through. So I think emotionally it was something very different for me. I think lockdown was also obviously quite emotional for all of us, but you know, obviously not having my job now was then an additional pressure to me. But I think how I viewed it, and because I mean we were all in lockdown, I'm in lockdown with my spouse as well, so it also feels like, you know, it was okay because we're all facing unprecedented times, and I didn't feel like really alone, but I did feel that, okay, maybe I'm not the only one going through this. And through digital platforms like Dumisa shared with us, we also got to see a lot of content of other people sharing similar experiences, whether they had lots of income, people didn't have jobs, or people didn't, you know, they were facing different challenges. That made me feel a little comforted in a way that, you know, we're all in this thing together, and we don't have to kind of be so hard on ourselves, and we don't have to feel like, you know, the world's kind of coming to an end, even though it did feel like that in the first 21 days. But I think what I have now done is had to refocus. And I think for me, that keep on going is very relevant for me at this point, where I have to be strict on myself. I have to create routines. So I have to still wake up like I'm going to work. So I still have to wake up, do things that I would usually do. So go for a run, get my laptop out. And I think one of the other things I've learned is also to count my blessings. So even in amongst having lost my job, I've had to also say, actually, I'm still studying. So I've got that going for me. So I'm also a student. I'm currently doing my MBA at Henley. And I've had to kind of say, well, you know, I've got that going for me. And actually, if anything, let me excel at that. Let me focus on that. And let that be something I do really great at. And I think I'm blessed and grateful for that. So I wake up and I think, okay, I'm going to take out my laptop. I'm going to have my notes. I'm going to, I've got kind of like a process so I don't feel stuck. And the biggest thing for me now that I'm building closely with some of the people on this call is around a digital platform. It's around content, and it's around building communities online. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that I commend you on is I know it's been an emotional roller coaster for you, but what I do commend you on is the ability to maintain a discipline. Now, I think the critical element about maintaining the discipline is that, interestingly enough, that's a skill, right? So every time that you get up and continue a routine or develop a habit or a practice that benefits you, that is typically known as discipline. So sportsmen get up and they train every day. That's a discipline, and they do it all the time, but it is for their benefit in terms of the outcome that they're trying to achieve. So one of the critical advantages that you can take as the youth moving forward in this situation and this time is to build those levels of discipline. I know you're home. I know you're stuck at home. I know you're having to learn a whole new mode of learning through internet, through this, that, and the other, but I think you've nailed it when you say, I get up, I behave like I'm going to work, I shower. My wife does that remarkably. She gets up every day, she puts on her makeup, she sits behind the laptop, and she works. So, and those levels of discipline are important. They lay the foundation for the future. It is those things that you do that lay the foundation for the future, that stop you from also getting into a point of paralysis. So, Claudia, what did we get? I guess we got a lot of skills, right?
Yeah, so we got 13 for skills, 4 for experience, and absolutely nothing for qualifications.
Whoa, okay, all right. So we're all in the same boat, preaching to the converted, which is good. But the thing is about skills is that it's something that you're going to go out and have to get. So the difference now with qualifications, well, typically you were taught qualifications. You got qualifications through a teaching process, right? So, but skills is continuous learning that you have to do. So let's discuss what are those, why skills? Well, for me, skills for the future of the youth, if you start taking advantage of this time to start developing skills, and as I said, discipline is one of them, you actually create a level playing field for yourself, right? So let me be controversial and go to one extreme. The idea that you can finish school and say, I have an engineering degree and therefore I expect a job, are gone. And those were probably fading before COVID came along. The idea that you can come out with a qualification with the expectation of something is probably faded. So what skills then start saying is that I need to start asking the question, what is it that I have that I can supply society with that it needs? Now, whether society becomes a function of a company or a corporate, or whether society becomes a function of what you're delivering, i.e. what my son is talking about in terms of his business, vary to person to person. But what is critical is the idea that you consistently be finding a skill or developing a skill that you're doing. My chief, you're gonna have to put yourself on mute. Mr. Ntuli, if you can put yourself on mute, please, Baba. Can you hear me, Baba Ntuli?
Hello?
Yes, if you can put yourself on mute, please, Baba.
Oh, all right. No, it's fine. I'll do so.
Thank you, because we can hear your thank you, Baba. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining anyway. That's Principal Ntuli from the Meadowlands High School. So thanks for joining. So skills are going to be critical. The second thing that skills do, and this is important for the youth to understand, is that they level the playing field. Now, job specs, and I saw earlier on, I think it's Makwando, sorry, I've just forgotten the person's name who wrote about recruiters. Not long ago, and actually to some cases still today, when you look at a job spec, the two opening critical criterias are qualifications and experience, right? If you don't meet that, you automatically fall off completely. So in the future, the little box that used to be now at the bottom called skills is now going to come to the top. And the important thing about skills is that you're going to have to learn how to articulate them. So if you say one of my skills is communication, great. Explain how communication becomes your skill. If you say one of my skills is working in teams, then you're going to have to explain how. So the upskilling of your capability in those areas is going to be important, and it creates a level playing field for others, for yourself and others. And the last point I'll make before we go start getting some questions is skills are transferable. Now, there's another part of what I work on, which is on leadership. And what I always say about leadership is that leadership is a position, it's not a function. In other words, just because you're good at a certain position or at a certain function, call it HR, call it what you like, what tended to happen in the past is those people who were good at that function were promoted to leadership positions. And hence we discovered over time that sometimes those people were not great leaders, right? But leadership is actually a position. In other words, you need to understand the traits of leadership. And the moment you understand the traits of leadership, you're able to transfer that leadership skill to wherever you go. So whether you're in a retail business or whether you're in the finance business, the leadership component of what it is that you have to carry out remains the same. Again, also working in teams. It doesn't matter what sector, what function, or what job you're doing. Teamwork and how you work with teams is consistent across the board. So hence it's important during this time to take advantage of the future by developing, upskilling, and continuously reskilling yourself on certain skills that you already have, but you just need to amplify. What I'd like us to do before we go to the last speaker is to ask Claudia, can you just probably have a look? Folks, please put some questions down on the chat group, and we'll get to some of the questions, as many of them as we can, straight after we've spoken to Refilwe. And we can see what we can do with regards to those that we don't get to in the future. So my other panelist is Refilwe, another lady who has been, and actually interestingly enough, we met over LinkedIn based on her quote that she had on LinkedIn about trying to empower the youth. But you know, Refilwe and the dynamics we've tried to put here are sort of three different dynamics. The one dynamic is Dumisa, who's at work, I mean, he's running his own business, et cetera, and the impact there. Then we've got Nomzamo, who was at work, who's now had to leave work. And then we've got Refilwe, who is at work. And the question I'd like to ask Refilwe is, to that point, how is it that you are putting down the foundations of things that need to be prepared for in the future? And tell everybody your young age that you are, in terms of the, you know, the reap what you sow element of it, in terms of what you are sowing at the present moment.
Yes, I'm very young. Thank you, Vic. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's keeping warm. It's freezing here in Joburg, especially. So yes, I'm 26 years old. I've just gone over my quarter life crisis, which is the age of 25. Anybody at the age of 25 knows it's a crisis at that age. So I'm at that point, I think, in my life where I'm almost cementing myself, you know, to say, as Miss Universe said, in terms of my career, but also personally, you know, I've gone through the trying to figure it out in my early 20s. At a point now where with my career, I have a clear idea of where it is I want to go. And 2020 was supposed to be that year of 20 plenty, where everything looked like it was on track. I had it all figured out. I knew what was my next promotion. You know, I was doing my YouTube thing. Everything was going great, basically. And not to say it's terrible right now. It's just I've had to take a pause and look back at the drawing board to say, well, things are changing. I can't go ahead in a traditional sense of, working hard and expecting a promotion to come my way, but that I have to carve my own way, basically, in terms of what is it that I want to do, and be vocal about it with my employers, and then also on the personal side as well. Not waiting for the right age, because we think. I was looking forward to the mark of 30 and thinking this is when I'll have it all figured out. So let me wait for 30 to do 1, 2, 3, do my MBA, get married, have kids, whatever the case is. And now with COVID, it's like, well, actually, life can happen and I could be dead in a month or whatever the case is. So why wait, So I think at where I am in life and with what COVID is teaching me is that I have to make my own way. I have to make my own path and be very clear about what it is I want. Go back to the drawing board and look at how am I going to go about doing that, because the traditional way of doing things is no longer there. The way we've connected, Vic, the work that we are doing, even with my YouTube channel, I was looking to do interviews with people. And at the beginning of COVID, I thought, well, that's not going to happen now because I'm so used to sitting down with somebody, across them and chatting about whatever the topic is. And it's like, well, I can't do that anymore. So am I going to give up, or am I going to find another way of doing it? Going about with my platform. So it's been a great journey in terms of having to calm down, pause, and think about what is my way forward. How can I continue to do the things that I plan to do, but in a different way, because the world is changing. And I think as the youth, that's what we need to look at. We've just spoken about how qualifications are going to become, irrelevant, and skills are going to be the thing. So looking at what skills do you bring to the table and how you're going to vocalize that, as Vic said. And go out there and get it, and not wait for it to come to you, because that's what we've all been doing, waiting for your boss to notice you so they can give you that promotion. Well, if they don't notice you, you're just gonna sit there and wait for it for how long? So it's been a great moment, COVID, to just pause and rethink the way we're going to do things post-COVID.
Yeah. So planning the dream. So the one construct is dreaming the plan. When you're younger, you're setting the vision, you've got the hope, you've got the aspirations, you've got the desire, you've got the want. And normally people get stuck there. They plan all their lives, they never get to the thing that they really always wanted to do, they never get to the thing that they always, were purposed to do, were passionate to do. And they take the trajectory of going in another direction. Dreaming the plan is great, setting the vision is fantastic, but planning the dream, executing against that plan is important. And that's what I think you're talking to, Review. You're talking to the point that now it's about what do I put into place? And that's a practical thing. It's setting the objectives, it's setting the goals. The vision is 10 years. The objectives is probably annually to get to that 10 years. The goals are monthly in that year, and the tasks are daily. And it is the tasks that trip everybody up, because the tasks don't feel like they're relevant to the objective or the vision. If I'm an athlete and I want to run in the Olympics in the next 4 or 5 years, and that's my vision, the fact that I have to change my diet tomorrow seems irrelevant to my vision, and yet it is the most significant. And that's the bit that we're talking about in terms of taking advantage of this period and this time for the future. What is that small task that you're doing day by day? What are those small habits that you're doing day by day? Because I come back to the point, you reap what you sow. So if you look at how farmers farm, it's about lining up that field. It's about planting very specifically the plant that they want. Plant bananas and get surprised that when apples come up, right? So 10 years from now, don't be surprised who you are, because if you look back 10 years, that's what you planted. that's what you created. So those are the conversations that we have, particularly within planning the dream. Great. Do we have any questions? Are we all okay? By the way, I mean, is it making sense? Is it helping? Is it adding value? Please say so in the chat. In the meantime, Claudia, which questions can we take so we can?
So we haven't got any questions in yet, but I do like a comment that Daryl made where he said, we now look at the ability to learn and adapt. I think that's quite a life skill to have. We've got a stunning quote from Nomzamo: "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." Amy's asking for a minute to think of our questions. Sure, go ahead. And from Gielman, we've got a question: does the notion accreditation equals competency not exist anymore? Would you like to answer that?
Well, yeah, I would actually. So competency and accreditation go hand in hand. So I have done an engineering degree. I am an engineer and I have the capability to do X, Y, Z. The difference is, Hillman, is are you able to do that X, Y, Z on your own? Are you able to do that X, Y, Z in groups? How do you perform when doing that X, Y, Z in groups? Do you encourage people in groups when you're doing that X, Y, Z? Do you lead people in groups when you're doing that X, Y, Z? Can you critically think when that X, Y, Z is going in a different direction? Are you able to shift and move? Are you able to take people along? So, you know, it's a combination of things. Are you able to negotiate within a team when when there are 10 people who are doing different things? So what's happening is when we look at just qualifications or just competency to be able to perform, which is generally, and I was in recruitment, I thought, well, this person they've done it before and they can do it. When we now start looking at the nuances of what actually drives things forward, it is about the skills that fall within that capability, the skills that fall within that competency. Yes, I've been an MD before, but can you lead a team of people? And have you done it before? And what are the things that you do to lead people? I mean, that question is answered over and over again with people, but we haven't really delved into the skill of being able to do that. And yes, digital skills are vital for moving forward. And I'm going to talk about the e-commerce opportunities that are arising that force us in more ways than one. I mean, Zoom before, I mean, by the way, how many of you knew of Zoom before Feb? I mean, I think the closest I got was Skype. Zoom went from, if I remember correctly, a turnover of 10, if I'm not mistaken, it was like 10 million in December to 200 million in a month in February. So the amount of people that went on it, but we've all now had to become digitally inclined and digitally capable. Is there anything else?
Yes, we do have a question from Sizwe. Since we're currently living in the information age, would you consider information as important as a skill going forward?
Review it.
Wow, Vic, thanks for putting me on the spot like that. I think so, definitely. I recently read somewhere where they were talking about data, actually, how I think they were saying data is like the new oil in terms of the 21st century where we are right now. So that is data as an information. So definitely it is a skill that I would consider information important as a skill, because where we're going, and if you look at e-commerce, even like what Vic is saying, you need information for all of that. So definitely I would, yeah. I hope that answers the question.
It does, and I'll elaborate on that. So there are stages in the process of getting to wisdom. And this is my theory. The first one is data, it's information. I use my daughter as an example. She's 6 years old. Right now, she's learning how to count. She's learning how to do her ABCs. That's the gathering of data. That's information. When you then translate that data into knowledge, you're going through a completely different process. So data and information goes to knowledge. Knowledge now is when she's now able to count backwards, say, hey, Dad, if I take 4 and 4, it gets 8, etc., etc. But we all now know, and we didn't know this before, that knowledge is not understanding. Understanding is the synthesis of knowledge to get to a point where now this is where we start talking about leadership, where people are synthesizing knowledge in order to get to understanding. And understanding is the process that we go through all the time. It's the same thing I was saying about you reap what you sow, you read it over and over again. All of a sudden you find new words and new emphasis and new things that you were reading it before, but you're not getting, but you're moving to the process of understanding. And understanding then gives us wisdom. And wisdom is the point at which you understand. To understand that, you actually have to wait for others to be able to give you the information. That's leadership. But it only starts with information. So information, yes, a long-winded way of saying, is vital, which is why you should consistently be updating yourself, reskilling yourself with information, synthesizing it to knowledge, digesting it to understanding, and hopefully it'll give you what you need into the future. Hope that makes sense. Is there anything else? Let's give Nomzamo a question.
I'm sorry, I've just had 2 people asking if we're sending out the recording. If you could just answer that quickly.
Yes, I think we can. My digital skills are not that good, so hopefully I can do that, right? Tamisa, everybody else? Yes, we can do that. Absolutely.
Yes, we can. And then there was also a mention of a podcast, Vic, so you can just mention that as well. Because you're going to be doing a podcast.
Yes. No, absolutely. What I'll do is I'll give you a bit of a sense of what we're going to be doing with the subscription-based modeling that we're going to be taking from July. You'll be happy to know it's not just me you're going to be listening to. There's a lot of people out there and who we will be bringing in to have conversations on various subjects and various topics. But allow me just before we end to be able to give you that information with regards to what we'll be doing there. So sorry, there was another question that you said,
yeah, there are quite a few. So there's one from Chinolo. She's asking, I've been learning Japanese. However, it's very difficult to stay focused when you have no one to practice the language with. So how would you encourage a person to keep on keeping on when they're feeling discouraged?
Well, I think that's definitely a question for Nomzamo. Nomzamo, you can definitely dive into that.
Hi, Chinolo. You know, funny enough, I've got a similar, I'm not learning Japanese, but I've got a similar challenge on something that I'm trying to pick up or do. And I think what I've learned is that you need to expand your horizons just a little bit more. So don't think about the Sotho or Zulu or Tswana mom that you're with, and now you're thinking like, who am I going to speak Japanese to? Because we're in this digital age, you don't have to connect with like, you know, a South African any longer. Now you can go onto LinkedIn. You can find another, you know, person who's sitting in New York, who's sitting in Hong Kong, who's sitting in, you know, Korea, and send them a message, you know. So we're in that time of, you know, don't be afraid to just reach out to other people. There are no more boundaries. The world is flat now. So we're all facing COVID. We're all in this. We're all at home. So now's a good time for you to actually just reach out and find circles. There's a lot of groups, there's communities. I mean, young people are really good with like Facebook groups as well. So find groups that you can connect with that are, you know, maybe even internationally based, and find like there's English, Japanese teachers. Maybe there's a group that you can join that can motivate you. I mean, in my case, I joined a group called Travel Noir. It's like specifically for African females that starts up like travel tech. It's like a travel tech startup group. But they're all based all around the world. So they're based from like Nigeria to like Canada to, you know, all around the world. And they've also helped me just from my anxiety around, you know, oh my gosh, not being able to go outside or not being able to like travel and do the things I enjoy, which, you know, used to keep me energized. And I know I can no longer do those things. I found inspiration and encouragement in that group because there's a lot of, you know, good quotes, there's stats, there's news, there's information I'm getting just all across, you know, not just in South Africa. So I think find a way that you can reach out into groups of other people. It's, you know, it will be strangers, but ultimately it might be the best relationships you ever form in your life. So I hope that kind of helps you.
No, thanks, Zami. Thanks. No, absolutely. I think you put it well. No need to add to that. That's just it. I'd like to take this question from Adeline, Claudia, if that's all right, which is about
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
replaced by AI. And how does one actually avoid being replaced? And absolutely, one of the things that artificial intelligence and robotics hasn't been able to do yet, and I say hasn't been able to do yet, is take away the human-centered skills that are required. As we move forward, the human-centered skills are going to become even more critical than they have been before. And those human-centered skills that I'm referring to are skills, such as problem solving, such as teamwork, such as leadership, such as communication, such as critical thinking. Those are the skills that need to be developed more so. That's the first element. The second element is, I think there's AI very specific to a particular area. And I think there's where human-centeredness is going to be continuously growing. And an example of that is one of the things that I did in my investigation was truly to appreciate the magnitude of YouTube. Now, YouTube is the biggest employer of people in the world, if you think about it. And I'm not saying YouTube the company, I'm saying YouTube the platform. YouTube the platform has 2 billion people on it. And if you dig deep into YouTube the platform, you begin to start dissecting it and beginning to realize that YouTube actually is the home of entrepreneurs. And if you dig even deeper, you begin to realize that YouTube is the home of entrepreneurs who are actually people following their passion and their purpose and their objectives. So it is important that, and we'll have that conversation a bit more as we go along. I want to end with that and just give you some stats, something to think about, because I do think in the digital age, as it was said earlier by Daryl, there is an opportunity tremendously to start taking advantage of that and working it towards ourselves, who are people who, if we find our purpose and our passion, the model then becomes how do we then display that purpose and passion? Not how do we get employed, how do we display it? And whether that display comes from other organizations, or whether that display comes from ourselves as a solopreneur, as a youpreneur, as an entrepreneur, that becomes the discussion. Not, as Zami says, I'm expecting, something to come to me and I'm waiting for it, because that's not going to be the way of the future anymore. Any others?
Yes, we've got one from Amy. How do we mobilize companies like MTN in conjunction with government to make sure that everyone has access, even if they don't have the money to buy data?
Yeah, I believe data is the next water. It's the next air. I mean, I think voice has almost disappeared as something that we all got excited about in terms of being able to communicate. Data is going to be the big one. And I think they're a bit behind the curve because obviously COVID has come along and the upsurge of the requirement for data has become monumental. And that conversation is going to be taking place. I do know, Amy, that conversation is taking place consistently behind the scenes, not just with government, but also with the private sector, really starting to say, guys, for our sakes, if we have people working remotely, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, not only do we need the right kind of data, but we need the right kind of data at the right kind of speed, bandwidth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that's a process. And as that process, the uptake of that process kicks in, it'll begin to start revealing itself. But it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And I know they're considering it. It's not something that, as you know, probably in the news, they've had to drop data prices, et cetera, et cetera. I think that fight is going to continue.
Okay, we've got a few more questions. How many do you want to answer still?
So let's take one or two more, and then let's keep the others and see how we can actually respond in the future.
Okay, I love Demisa's question. It goes, how does someone identify their high income skills?
Right. Yes. Trust that to come from my son. He knows the answer, but he's asking me the question. So let me go to Refuel and ask her to say, hey, yes, give us a sense of what you know. And I'll be interested just to get a sense of what your take is on how do you know what your skills are? How do you get to appreciate what your skills are?
So for me personally, because a lot of times I think as a young person, I haven't always necessarily known these are my skills or this is what I bring to the table. But I've looked at, you know, what other people would always come to me for, if that makes sense. So there's certain things that, you know, people will always come to you for, to say, please help me with this or do this for me or whatever the case is.
Yep.
And actually one of the people who actually made me realize what my, you know, skills were, what I brought to the table, was my coach, just through coaching and all of that. But also you just by identifying who are the people, like what do people normally come to you for? And actually a few years back when I was looking into doing a blog, which now actually turned into a YouTube channel, but, you know, I was looking, and one of the questions what they were asking is, in order for you to know what to blog about, what do people normally come to you for? So whether they come to you for financial advice, or they come to you to do their makeup or their hair, whatever the case is, what do people normally come to you for? And that they know you can't, they're confident that you will be able to assist them with that. So I think that's one of the way to recognize or realize that this is my high value skills, or this is what I bring to the table. Because as a young person, you won't necessarily know or even articulate it to say this is actually a skill. Because I was told that I'm good at networking. I didn't know networking was a thing that I could say I'm good at this. So,
and you are good at networking.
Yes.
I'm good at it. No, thanks for that. And absolutely. I mean, you know, they actually do say that by the time of the age of 6 or 7, you can actually detect in people what their skill is. What do they enjoy the most? You can see whether the kids sit down and take a pen and like painting. You can see whether they're standing on the table and singing. You can see whether they're going out and grabbing groups of people together to play with. You can kind of start picking it. And I've focused on my daughter quite extensively and began to quickly pick up what it is that she's, you know, what she leans towards. That's the one element, and obviously that's young and you. That's one point. The other point is obviously observation. Exactly what Rafiul would get. Get people to come up to you and say, you know, ask them, you know, what do you think I'm strong at? What do you think I'm good at, etc. The third thing is we talk about this a lot in the course, identity and the sense of self. When you begin to truly understand who you are, you begin to very quickly get into the sense of this is what I enjoy, right? And it's the process of getting to understanding who you are and what you enjoy is there's a little bit of a formula that I know that I've created that talks about inspiration, and inspiration leads to ambition, ambition leads to motivation, motivation leads to application. So inspiration, what are the things that inspire you? You know, back in the day, it was the policeman, the fireman, the nurse, the teacher, the pastor, the etc. But it was the things about them that inspired you, that triggered something about you that you enjoyed. If the pastor was speaking, you liked the fact that he was changing people's lives. If the policeman was there, he was protecting, fireman was saving, the nurse was helping, the businessman, and it is those triggers that then start igniting you to say, I'm inspired to be this, or I'm inspired by them. And it's that inspiration that starts eliciting the kind of skills within you that you find very interesting. But that's another way of looking at it. But when you get to a certain point very quickly, just ask, or start having this identity, sense of self, sense of belief, sense of confidence. But we work on that. We actually go through a program that starts talking about that in terms of how to acquire that. So there's a number of ways, you know, Denise, and I know you know the answer, but it's relevant for others, for people to understand. I'm just going to take 2 more, and then what I don't want to do is go over too much. I don't really want to go over more than by 10 minutes. So if everybody can hold on. There was a question really about industries that are not adjusting to skills and more qualifications. It is going to be a process. Your job specs that you see are going to continuously ask for your 10-year experience and your qualifications. And for now, it's going to knock you off the platform. But as the youth, you do have the advantage of saying, this is not a short game. This is not a tomorrow game. Let me make sure I sow the seeds of being ready for what's going to happen in the next 24 months, in the next 36 months. I think the last 3-4 months have shown us that things can literally happen overnight. And we never used to believe that. We never used to believe that we can probably almost end racism overnight. And that's what's happening in the world. And it's a global united decision that's happened in there. And obviously, nobody ever believed we could be. So prepare yourself for the future now and understand that skills are critical. Yes, recruiters are still asking for what's borderline almost irrelevant for the future, but still that shouldn't stop you from preparing yourself for what is to come in the meantime, whilst you're having to play in the environment as it is at the present moment. If you continue just to play in the environment as it is at the moment without preparing yourself for the future, you're going to get left out when the future appears. And it's going to appear. When I say future, I'm not talking 10 years. I'm talking we're talking months and a couple of years at the very most. Okay, so folks, an hour goes really, really quickly, and I do not want to keep you too long. I just want to end off on a couple of things. And the one is that the point that was made earlier on is that the digital age is a powerful age for young people to take advantage of into the future. I was telling you that 2 billion people are on YouTube right now. 1 billion hour of videos are watched daily. That's the amount, that's where the headspace is going. It has been predicted by the year 2040, 95% of all purchase, or 95% of GDP will be done on e-commerce. Now that's massive. Right now, our GDP figures, that is online, e-commerce, entrepreneurship, etc., is 1%. I think it's 1 point something percent. Globally, it's looking at 95%. So if you're preparing yourself for the future, you have to prepare yourself digitally, e-commerce, online, skills. Who am I? What do I offer? What is needed? How do I present what is needed based on the skill and the capability that I have? Currently, 40% of China's GDP is e-commerce. Now that's massive. Those are the kind of things that I want the youth to start appreciating and understanding in terms of what the world is going to look like. The US, 14% of GDP was purchases online before April. When April came, it shot to 27%. So that's massive. So what it's creating is an opportunity that never before has been there. Whereas if you wanted to be an entrepreneur and open up a shop, you needed to go to a mall to find a shop to open up it. Today, you can do it online. So I want you to think about the opportunities that are there. And this is just one. I'm just giving you this as one. There are plenty of others that we'll talk about in the future. The opportunities that are there in order to portray yourself and project yourself and present yourself into the future, so that you're not stuck in the present and you don't become victims of the current environment and the current situation. Is it hard? It is. It's a shift of mindset. It's a shift of belief. And it's a shift of thinking. It is hard, but nevertheless, it is possible. I go back to what I started off with by saying, you need to be planting the right seeds that you can reap later. You with help, you with support, you with information, you with advice, but you need to be planting the right seeds that you can reap later. And I'm going to end on something that's very personal to me. I can assure you that the moment you find your path, the moment you find your purpose and your passion, nothing can stop that. Absolutely nothing. Not COVID, not the world, not people. Because you are brought into this world as a creator. You are a creator from the moment the sperm meets the ovary. No one else is involved. Your whole human being, from your eyes, your heart, your blood, your whole brain, your spine, your bones, the fact that you're breathing, that has been created. So you are a creator. The canvas of this world is for you to write on, not to be written on. And how you create is by ensuring that you know who you are and you put into place the things that need to develop so that the best version of who you are can appear. 2 things you must have that are in your control: patience and perseverance. So to end off, I'd just like to tell you about the program that we have that starts 1st of July. It is a subscription-based program. If you go into the website, you'll see the pricing around the program. It's a subscription-based program. It runs over the course of a year. And what we're going to have on it is we're going to have career podcasts. So we're going to have very specific conversations at least once a month with different career people, not just talking about the careers of now, but the careers of the future, and helping you to start thinking about the direction that you need to take in the careers that you want to take. I'm going to explain to you later in that, during those courses, the difference between a job and work, and there is a fundamental difference between job and work. And we're going to be talking about work, not jobs. We're also going to be having mogul classes, and mogul classes are dedicated very specifically to subject matter experts who will talk. For example, the conversation that we're having about the digital future, the conversation that we're having about platforms in YouTube, they will talk to those very specifically in terms of how they aid and help you to be able to start progressing yourself into the future. We will then also have once a month what we call masterclasses, industry lead masterclasses. We will tell you about sectors of the market that you should be aware of. What's happening in the financial services sector? What's happening in the healthcare sector? And some of the questions that you're asking here will be very relevant is the word, to those subject matters, because we will bring those individuals in who are those industry leads to start having those conversations, with them. And then on top of that, we will have the value add, program that is designed to talk to subjects like preparation. What is preparation? How do you prepare? Choice. How do you make decisions? The question you're asking, how do I make a decision between left and right? And what are the kind of things that I need to put into place to help me make decisions into the future? Dreaming the plan. How do I set a vision? Planning the dream. How do I execute against that? Not just dream it, but execute it. And then how do I keep on keeping on? Because life is going to come along. There's not going to be one COVID, there'll be many more. But what is my mantra in life when I go through difficult times? I have a mantra that, that I use, that, one has to learn not to wait for the sunshine, but to learn to dance in the rain as well. And I've practiced learning to dance in the rain for a long time. So how do you use those mantras? And then the other one is defining your success. Typically, people define their success from a material-based background. I want to have this, I want to own that, etc. We would like you to define it from a value-based background in terms of how do you feel? Do I have the right health? Do I have the right love around me? Am I doing the things that make me happy, etc., etc., etc.? What does success look like there versus the car, the house, and everything else that is materialistic? So that is the subject matter, and that are the kind of things that we'll be talking about. Is everybody okay? Can I get a thumbs up from people? We've got 2 minutes left to go. What we'll do is, as some of the questions, I hope they are recorded and they're here, we'll continue with those questions. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them. We've quite a large number of participants, which is fantastic. And I do invite you to, one, look at some of the free programs that we have on the website, and two, please join and subscribe. We're going to have a great time during the course of from July onwards for the next year, as we go through these subject matters with subject matter experts. Fantastic. Thanks for all staying on board. I see quite a lot of you will continue to stay. Thank you for being part of this, and enjoy June 16. Take a moment to give thanks to those who sacrificed themselves for what we've been able to do today, today in 1976. But over and above that, please enjoy your time with your loved ones, and stay warm and stay safe, and we will be in touch soon. Cheers.